Council Vice President Gabe Albornoz, you recently traveled to Mexico, McAllen, Texas, to the border. What did you see there?
Well, thank you, Andrea. So I was able to participate in a delegation that, we paid our own way to go down to the border to see with our own eyes and experience what's going on, because we've seen another wave of unaccompanied minors and immigrants fleeing violence and terrible conditions in their countries of origin. So we wanted to see what was happening. And what I witnessed, Andrea, was horrific. It was really difficult to absorb and process. We first visited a respite center that is managed by Catholic Charities in McAllen, and specifically Sister Norma Pimentel, who is a remarkable woman and provides services for families who have been through the asylum seeking process and are permitted to enter into the United States to meet with the sponsor until their asylum case is heard. Now, the asylum cases, there's a huge backlog, so it could be years in some instances before those cases are heard. But in the meantime, these families arrive with not much more than the shirts on their back. And so Sister Norma provides a bus ticket and some love and caring, as well as food and clothing to help these families be in a somewhat better position to get where they're going. And it's proved to be a very powerful and important lifeline for a lot of these families, so that they're coming with some semblance of a plan to their sponsors. But the most difficult part of the trip was we visited Reynosa, Mexico, which is the border town on the other side of McAllen on the Mexican side. And what I witnessed was truly horrific. Under the previous presidential administration, there were policies enacted that continue to require families, and they've been extended by this president, where families have to wait on the Mexican side of the border until their cases come up to be heard. And so what you have is this logjam of families who have experienced tremendous trauma. And in this one city, which is very much dangerous and run by the drug cartels, we were in a plaza where there were about 1,000 people in horrific conditions, living in tents, in some cases, not even living in tents, just stringing together some tarp with rope and having some shelter, but not very much of it. And the cartels had actually brought in porta-johns, but they were charging 15 pesos to the families to be able to use the bathrooms and 45 pesos for them to be able to take showers. And it was clear that COVID was a huge issue. There were many people that were exhibiting signs of the virus, that had high fevers, and the level of despair and desperation was palpable. And I have kids who are around the age of many of the kids that I saw, and that hurt the most, just seeing them in those conditions. But the reason they're coming, Andrea, is because the conditions in their countries of origin have gotten so bad, that they feel they have no other choice. There are entire businesses that have gone under because of the pandemic. And so there really are just no jobs available. And so you can't make ends meet on even the most basic level. And we have seen corruption, which has led to a collapse of many of the federal government infrastructure and the government infrastructure in these countries, which is a huge problem. And then the last two horrific elements are climate change, which has accelerated a lot of the challenges that these communities are facing. And then finally, and most significantly, we heard from families that they haven't seen the level of violence in their communities that they're seeing right now since the civil wars of the 1980s. And so between the drug cartels and the gangs, they're recruiting kids as early as elementary school. And so families feel as though they have no other choice. They're willing to risk their lives. They're willing to risk their life, spend their life savings, knowing it's not going to be easy, knowing it's going to be difficult, knowing they're risking their lives, knowing they're going to put up with a lot of really terrible rhetoric. They're willing to risk all of it because they just see no other option. So we as local jurisdictions need to be prepared, because we can't have our head in the sand. It's important for us economically. We have a legal responsibility to support these families, and I think we have a moral responsibility as well.
With this new wave, how many immigrants the county is expecting?
So the Biden administration has reported that we should expect at least 3,000 unaccompanied minors, but that doesn't include families. And that also doesn't include the people whom were able to make it across the border without being stopped by Border Patrol, without having had a case heard. And while that number is small, honestly, compared to the number of people that actually have received asylum cases, those numbers are somewhat unaccounted for. So we don't know the exact number. And based on what I saw, Andrea, and the stories I heard, we can expect tens of thousands more coming over the next few months. Because until the conditions in their countries of origin are addressed, we're going to continue to see these waves.
And how is the local government prepared for that?
So we're doing a few things. Number one, we're trying to ensure that our existing programs and services are aligned. And it's in the county's best interest. It's not just a moral responsibility, but it's in the county's best economic interest as well for us to support these families and help them before they are in complete crisis. And so that means coordinating our efforts within our local government, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Housing, other ancillary agencies. That's got to be tight. So that's number one. The second is we need to really strengthen and support our nonprofit organizations, our churches, our faith-based institutions, all the other entry points that families go through. It shouldn't matter what entry point they go through. They should be receiving care that is well organized and that is well thought through and that is culturally appropriate. And then finally, the thing that we're doing, we are working closely with the Biden administration. We've made a series of recommendations. For example, we believe temporary protective status should be included among Guatemalans who represent the largest percentage of people that have come over since January. And so there are policies at the federal level that we will need enacted. And all of this is predicated on at some point, for goodness sake, we need our federal government to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Until that happens, we're going to continue to have these challenges.
Council Vice President Gabe Albornoz, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Anja.
If you find our videos useful to you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.